In this video, we're going to take a look at how to create support missions. What a support mission is basically some type of mission that is usually not intended for combat purposes. Support aircraft could be things such as tankers or AWACS. Creating a support mission is relatively straightforward and requires the creation of at least 2 reference points. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create 2 separate support missions. The first one's going to be for the purposes of providing some AWACS support, and the second one is going to be providing some tanker support. So first thing we need to do is go ahead and create a couple reference points. Since we know the target region is going to be roughly here, I'm going to go ahead and set up my support units about 100 nautical miles away, about right here. So I'm going to press Control Insert to go ahead and create a reference point. I'm going to do Control Insert again to go ahead and create a second reference point. I'm going to go ahead and select these 2 reference points, and now I'm going to go ahead to Mission, go ahead and click on Add New Mission. So under this mission, I'm going to go ahead and call this AWACS. I'm going to go down here to a Support, not Patrol, and I'm simply going to press the OK button. As usual with any type of mission, we can make this a deactivated mission that is activated under certain triggers. We also have the ability, of course, to deactivate the mission should we need to at a later date as well. Once we've gone ahead and create the support mission itself, we simply come down here and decide the different options we'd like. The first one gives us the ability to select how many units we're going to keep on station at a time. Keep in mind this can conflict with this. For example, if I have 2 of something and ask for a 1/3 rule, and I ask for at least 3 units to be kept on station, they could all run about each other and give you some issues as far as launches goes. In this case, since we're only going to have a single AWACS aircraft, I'm going to go ahead and shut that off and try to keep 1 on station at all times. Afterwards, we have the ability to go ahead and define whether this mission is only one time. If we enable this, the aircraft will fly 1 loop of the mission, and then immediately return. This is a very useful option in the event that you're doing some kind of scouting operations. Below here, you have the ability to set it so active emissions are only on station. This is a very valuable setting for AWACS aircraft that you're trying to conceal, since simply the aircraft would launch, not activate its radar until it gets itself to the position in which it needs to go ahead and start activating its radar. Below that, we have the ability to define the navigation type. We can either set it as a continuous loop, in which case it'll go all the way through the reference points, turn around and go backwards, or we could set it as a single loop, in which case it's going to go all the way to the end of a reference points and come back. So for example, if I had sort of a triangle, sort of a shape like that, if I told them to do that, they'd actually fly it as a triangle versus reversed on the triangle. For this case, I'm going to go ahead and make this a continuous loop. On this side, we have the ability to go ahead and define our course for our mission. In this case, we have our 2 reference points. We need at least 1 reference point in order to define a support mission. After that, we have the ability to define the flight size. This is just like the other types of strike missions. In this case, if we want a single aircraft to be launching here, we can set this. If we want them to go in pairs. Keep in mind, this can run about all the different items that we have here, so it's important that you consider both these aspects. Also, if you do not have enough aircraft to actually launch, you need to make sure that you can either disable this checkbox or find more aircraft for the purpose of the mission. In this case, I'm going to leave this one checked on, only on account of the fact I know I'm only going to be working with a single aircraft and never have an issue. Below this, it gives us the ability to go ahead and define whether or not, if you're a tanker, to return to base after 1 refueling cycle, or we can actually define it so it only does a certain number of receivers. At this time, we don't have the ability to define how much fuel is provided for each one of its receivers, but we'll take a look at that in a minute. On the bottom right side, we have the ability to define how long the aircraft takes in order to get to its zone by selecting what type of transit throttle we want to use. We can actually say go military, in which case we'll go full speed to the support zone, but it'll have less fuel available. We can also define the station throttle, the transit altitude, which is the altitude in which you're approaching the target, or they're going to be the station altitude, which is how high off the ground you'll be once you get there. Keep in mind, it is possible to define this in such a way that it will not be possible to actually reach it. So let's go ahead and grab our units that we're going to be using for this purpose. In this case, I have a few E2Ds. I'm just going to apply them just like this. Note that 2 of them are unavailable because they're in maintenance currently, but these 2 are available, and basically they will constantly cycle on and off throughout the duration of the mission. One thing I do also want to set is I'm going to make sure the active emission is only on station, not to give away where my carrier is. If you are going to do active MCON, it's critical that you actually define it as active MCON. Otherwise, the aircraft will get to the station and never actually turn on its radar. So that's it as far as creating a simple AWACS mission. Now let's go ahead and create another mission for tanker support. So let's go see here. We have about a distance of, it looks like about 233 nautical miles. So it looks like our tankers are going to be about halfway as well. That's going to be about 160 miles. Let's go ahead and measure that out. Let's see, 233. It's going to be about 115. It's just going to put our tankers about here right in the middle. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing as I did before. Select my new reference points and go ahead and press the button required to go ahead and create a new mission. In this case, I'm going to press Control F11 to bring up the new mission. So just like before, we're going to go on and call this refueling. Oh, helps if you spell it correctly. Still didn't spell it correctly. There we go. And now we're going to go ahead and say class and define it as a support mission. Press the OK button. And now we go ahead and define everything as we did before. One thing you want to watch out for, however, is now that you've created a specific refueling mission, you have the ability to define all the different characteristics for that refueling mission. It's worth noting that under mission doctrine, the aircraft responsible for refueling must have refueling enabled here. Otherwise, it will not have the ability to go ahead and provide fuel for other units. So let's go ahead and grab these KC-135s. I'm simply going to assign them. And I'm going to say that I want 2 on station at all times. And I'm going to disable the one-time rule. I'm going to do a continuous loop for navigation. We're going to do flight size is going to be single aircraft. We can define this so that it comes in pairs to make things a little bit simpler here, in which case we're going to get 2 launched at a time. We have our transit throttle, our station throttle, as well as our altitude. Now, if I know I'm working with aircraft that cannot reach an altitude of 36,000 feet, it's really critical that you set the station altitude low enough so that they're actually able to receive fuel for a particular mission. So go ahead and close this one. Everything else is looking pretty good so far. And we'll go ahead and see what happens when everybody gets launched. We can now see how the different support units are making their way to their respective missions. We have the E2, which is on its way to a little track here, and we also have the pair of the KC-135s making their way as well. Note that as soon as the E2 got into position, it turned on its radar and it began scanning the area. And notice our other units here will actually go ahead and patrol back and forth just in the way that we supported. Keep in mind, at any point, if we wanted to, since we have a refueling capable aircraft, we could actually tell this support mission aircraft to quickly refuel back on the other support mission aircraft nearby. Note now that if we launch any sort of strike missions, we'll now be able to select this particular tanker now that it's in position for the purposes of doing in-flight refueling. If we were to take a look at that real quickly and set up our basic strike mission, we can now go to Tankers AAR, click on Configure, and now click Use Tankers Assigned to a Specific Mission, and now select that particular mission, which means that these aircraft will only use the tankers from that mission. The reason this is very, very powerful is it gives us the ability to launch the mission without the tankers being in place. As long as we're able to get the tankers in place, they will still be able to go ahead and refuel. We also have the ability to define when the particular aircraft start looking for fuel from these specific tankers. And we also have the ability to go ahead and define them to go ahead and follow the flight plan. The nice advantage to this is if you need fuel halfway through the flight, you have the ability to simply pick it up on your way. We can also set up so receivers can book tankers within a certain distance. The important thing here is if we select a very, very long distance, you could have an aircraft book a tanker and block other aircraft from being able to achieve their refueling capability. So that's something you're going to want to watch out for as well. So that concludes support missions.